At first, I didn't think it was real. I woke up to this blinding light, and I was transported to another place. Pluto TV! Then I heard a voice.
Come with me if you want to live.
There were thousands of movies and shows, and they were all free.
The truth is our secret.
It's just so beautiful.
On Pluto TV, free streaming of Terminator 2, Fringe, Arrow, The 100, and The X-Files may cause excitement, loss of sleep, and sudden belief in extraterrestrials. No credit cards or alien encounters necessary. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
Hi, Diva. It's Rachel.
And Jordan. Yeah, hi. Quick question.
Why are you not spending your Venmo balance?
Yeah, we're concerned.
You can, buy stuff with it.
Ugh, you love buying stuff.
And earn cash back on eligible purchases.
You love purchasing eligible things.
So the money your friend sent you yesterday, that's today's ramen or rideshare or eye patches.
The skincare kind, not the pyro kind.
Spend with Venmo, and you can earn cash back with Venmo Stash. Venmo Stash bundle terms and exclusions apply. Max $100 cash back per month. See terms at venmo.me/stash terms. ID verification required to use a Venmo balance.
Hello and welcome to the 145th episode of the Filmmakers Podcast. I am Giles Alderson, and this is a podcast where we talk filmmaking from indie film to studio films and everything in between. How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to F it up, in our very, very humble opinion. Today, we give you a live Q&A direct from Dirt in the Gate with director Mark Jenkins. He's also the writer, he's also the cinematographer and the composer, along with his lighting cameraman Colin Holt, as they talk about making their feature Bait on 16mm film for peanuts, how they hand process the film and how it's won a bevy of awards, including a BIFA for Breakthrough Producer, and has just been nominated for 2 BAFTAs, including Outstanding British Film of the Year and Outstanding Debut by a Director. Oh, it's such a treat that we have got this for you today, because the film Bait is out now, and you can go watch that either on Blu Ray, or you can go to iTunes or to Prime Video or the BFI Player and pick up Bait, which so many people have, and it has done so well. We're delighted that Dirt in the Gate recorded this for us, especially for the Filmmakers Podcast, and it is hosted by the rather fantastic Shaun Kimber. And thank you, Dan Palmer, for setting this up in the first place. You are a legend. Thank you, my man. He's a brilliant screenwriter, by the way. Seek him out, because Dirt in the Gate is a fantastic event held down at the Shelley Theatre in Bournemouth, where they play old 35mm films, 16mm films, classics that you don't often get to see on the cinema anymore, and they play them. It's a real joy to see any movie in its original format of film, and Dirt in the Gate do exactly that. Coming up, they have screenings of True Romance on the 15th of February, perfect for Valentine's Day. Or they have With Nell and I on the 15th of May. You fancy any of them? Check out @Dirt in the Gate on Twitter, and all the details will be there. Or go to shelleytheatre.com in Bournemouth, and you will find out so much information. So thank you again for doing this brilliant podcast with Mark Jenkins, the director, writer, cinematographer, composer, editor of Bait. It is a wonderful film. You will have heard about this film, you indie filmmakers out there. If you haven't, I suggest checking it out. It is weird, it is wonderful, it is delightful. No wonder it's getting a huge splash at the moment. And you can watch it now, and that's pretty cool. So before we get to that live Q&A down in Bournemouth at Dirt in the Gate, I want to thank you so much for those of you who have gone out and purchased and watched A Serial Killer's Guide to Life. Honestly, it's been an amazing week. The tweets and reviews and the love has been pouring in, and Staten and Poppy and Charity and myself and Katie have been absolutely delighted. Absolutely. So thank you so much. If you haven't yet had a chance, please go to serialkillersguidetolife.com and check out this movie. We poured our heart and souls into it. We made for micro budget, and it is available now. And just to get any movie released is a real joy. So do support if you can. If nothing else, just go to our Twitters and retweet it, and maybe someone else will. So all those people that have, thank you. The soundtrack is available and it is a beautiful soundtrack. At every Q&A we've done so far, everyone has mentioned how beautiful the soundtrack is. It's made by composer Lawrence Lovegreed, and it is available now. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. If you're a composer, you like that kind of stuff, do check it out. Do. So the producer, director, writer, Staten Cousins Rover Serial Killer's Guide to Life, and Poppy Rowe, the producer and star, will be joining myself and Dom Lenoir at the next Make Your Film event. And it is a week today. I can't believe it's crept up on us that quickly. It's the 28th of January, next Tuesday. So get your tickets, get on down there, because not only is Staten and Poppy going to be there with myself and Dom Lenoir, of course, and Martin Neely and Robbie McCain as well, helping us host. But it is our second guest down there is going to be Gareth Ellis Unwin. Now, Gareth is he's got a prolific career as a producer, and now he runs Screen Skills. And he's going to tell you all about that and how you can accelerate your career. But he's been a line producer and exec producer, and he's best known for his work on The King's Speech, which won Colin Firth an Oscar. And it also won him an Oscar, and he also won 7 BAFTAs for that film, including Best Film and Outstanding British Film. So, this Tuesday, Make Your Film. If you're in London, come on down. I think all the early birds are sold out, but it's only a tenner. It's a tenner. Come on down, network, meet other filmmakers, meet screenwriters, producers. We'd give it away for free if we could, but the venue costs money. And we have to give something for our guests for turning up, just a little petrol money. So do come on down if you can. It's going to be a brilliant event. As always, link is in the show notes. Come on down, come and say hello, if nothing else. The Make Your Film event is sponsored by Performance Insurance. They're amazing. I get just so much joy from them when I call up if I've got an issue, and they're so lovely. They will be down there at the Make Your Film event. So if you need insurance for any of your films that you're doing, your interviews, your promos, whatever it is, to be honest, you have to have insurance. It's so important. God forbid that something goes wrong and you don't. It's going to cost you, the person making it, putting their name as producer. So get on it. Go to Performance. Say Giles Alderson sent you. Say the Filmmakers Podcast sent you. They will look after you. So we will see you on Tuesday at the Make Your Film event. If you don't go, you miss out. Okay, we've got a Rain Dance discount for you, 20% off their latest course, which is the Actors Foundation Certificate on Monday, February the 10th. And we're giving you 20% off that. And the code is ACTING2020. Link to that is in the show notes. And I want to give some shout-outs this week, some more shout-outs. So you guys have been incredible. You really have this week, and I just want to shout you guys out. Thank you so much for your love and support of last week's episode with Staten and Poppy. We really had so much fun, basically, and we talked about how we made that film. If you haven't listened, go back and listen to that one. It's last week's episode, talking about how we made a serial killer's guide to life, and it is fascinating because we are so excited because it's the release that day. And thank you for all your love on Christy Wilson-Cairns' episode as well, which was the week before when she wrote 1917, and now she has just been Oscar nominated. Oh yeah. Congratulations, Christy. So shout outs for all your love this week go to Stephanie Davis, Moses Sabandaki, Peter McKiernan, Kelly Jubilee, Laura Neve, William Porteous, Jenna Suru, Jonathan Hall, who emailed me a fantastic email. Thank you, Jonathan. Absolute pleasure. And the Hypo, who gave us an absolutely delightful review. And if any of you lot would like to review this podcast, please go to your podcast depository of choice and write a lovely little review. It means the world to us. We can tweet about it. More people hear about the podcast and more people listen. It means we can get even more guests and carry on doing this, which I love doing. So support if you can, because it's free. This is free for you. So if you like this in any way, shout it out from the rooftops. Tell your friends, any filmmaking people you know, let them know about this podcast. So next week's podcast is going to be with the fantastic Shola Ammo, who is the director and writer of The Last Tree. Again, another fantastic indie film that swept the board with awards. He is a delight. Myself and Robbie sat down with him. So that is for you next week. So for now, sit down, relax, and enjoy this fantastic Q&A with Mark Jenkins, director of Bait, his lighting cameraman, Colin Holt, and hosted by the lovely Shaun Kimber, just after the movie has finished playing on its 16mm print down at Dirt in the Gate event at the Shelley Theatre in Bournemouth. you can't help but enjoy this one. Here you go.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Shaun, and I will be kind of hosting this Q&A. We've got about probably just under half an hour. So I'd just like you to show your appreciation, please, for Mark and Colin.
Thank you.
I think what we're going to probably do is I'm going to start off with a bit of a stage discussion, a couple of questions up here, and then we'll open it out to the audience. So it'd be great if you could be thinking of your questions while we're chatting, if that's all right. If I can actually see anybody. If we can start off then, just wondering, can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of the idea behind Bait and kind of and how it developed over time?
Yeah, it started in 1999 when I came up with the original idea for it, and at the time it was an idea about a young Cornish fisherman who was making a video diary of his life, just to kind of capture his way of life. And he borrowed, the idea in the film was that he borrowed a video camera off somebody in his village and started making a film about what he did day to day. And as soon as he picked up the camera, he realised that the lifestyle he thought he had was being compromised, and it wasn't going to be able to continue in the way that he wanted it to continue. Also, the camera became a catalyst for other people to come and address the camera and talk about their point of view about what way the community was going. So it was effectively like a found footage film originally. It was going to be sort of one long play mini DV tape was going to be the final film, but carefully scripted, but as if it was happening naturally. But then that went by the wayside when Apple released the iPhone. It was, and the idea that having a video camera in your hand was anything special sort of disappeared, because now probably about 90% of people in the room have got like a 2K camera in their pocket. So the idea that a camera could be a catalyst for anything sort of disappeared. And so that all happened, up until 10 years ago, I suppose. And so I put the film away. Also, the producer I was collaborating with at the time, was a really close friend of mine, died very suddenly. So the project sort of stopped and was put away. And then about, I suppose, 5 or 6 years ago, I went back to shooting film again, and we made a 45-minute long narrative film in the way that Bait was made, and that worked, and it was quite successful. And I decided that I wanted to make a feature film in the same way, and I looked around for projects that I had, and I had this one on the shelf, and just sort of looked at it and wondered whether it could survive a complete change of form, and whether the story and the theme at the heart of it could survive, and I decided it probably could. But, it was 20 years later, so instead of it being a film about a young fisherman, it's now a film about a middle-aged fisherman.
Right. So it's interesting. So in effect, the form changed quite a lot over that 20-year period, but the kind of theme stayed fairly constant.
Yeah, exactly. And I did think, that was a massive change. But actually, the film in its original incarnation was all about form. It relied on the form of the video diary. And now this film doesn't entirely, but keeps getting pointed out to me by critics and audiences that the form and the content complement each other. So it relies on the form in the same way. So it's not as big a change as I thought. Sort of learned through doing Q&As and reading reviews that maybe it isn't as big a departure as I thought it was.
Right. It's interesting because you talk about the way in which the idea developed over kind of a 20-year period, and you've said in interviews before that it's like the eclipse was one of the kind of catalyst points for that back in 1999. Do you think that the kind of issues, the themes that you're addressing in relation to the tensions between the communities have increased over the 20-year interim period?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I originally wrote it, it was set in a North Cornish fishing village, and it was so specific to that village that I thought other people within Cornwall wouldn't even be able to understand the story. So now, having travelled with the film internationally since February, and everywhere I go with it, the people who talk to me about it all say that the theme at the heart of it, no matter what your point of view is, it's certainly a theme that's very real for a lot of people and a lot of communities, which is great critically and commercially for the film, but quite depressing for society in general.
And I guess, because obviously you've been making films for a long time. I think it's about 17 films you've directed one way or another now, and it's very much you're very much a Cornish filmmaker, aren't you? So these kind of themes preoccupy you through most of your filmmaking. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, Cornwall's the context for my work, really. But I wouldn't say this film's about Cornwall. And I also wouldn't really say it's about fishing or tourism. For me, it's more the heart of this film is the problem with entitlement and privilege. And what that means. That's really what the film's about. So it could be set anywhere, but I could only make this film in Cornwall. Because if I tried to make it anywhere else, if I tried to make it in Bournemouth, I'd be guessing. And there's a real problem with that in cinema. I think people do guess. People think, oh, that's an interesting place to put a film, and then they guess what that area's like, and then you get problems with stereotypes and cliche and all that kind of stuff, which I just think, I don't know if I can write anything authentically, but the thing that I try and write authentically is the world that I know, and I know fishing communities, and so I don't know fishing communities. I know one fishing community, so I try and set things in that world, right? Because I know these people.
Right, thank you. I wonder if you could maybe tell us a little bit about your kind of approach to the very distinctive shooting of this film and how you went about kind of shooting it, and maybe we can also bring Colin in as well in terms of the kind of lighting and camera work as well.
Yeah. It's shot on a Bolex H16, the classic 16mm clockwork camera. So it's a spring wound camera which runs for about 27 seconds before it has to be wound again. It's shot on 100-foot spools of 16mm black and white negative, which I then hand process sort of frame by frame. So hand process the whole. All of the rushes, which I think for this one was about 8 kilometres, about 5 miles of film.
Right.
Which took like 3.5 months to do it. And also we shoot everything silently, and then everything's post-synced, which you might have noticed, despite the frame-accurate dialogue syncing. And then all of the sound is added afterwards. And the limitations of the way we shoot. So we shoot one take of everything and then one safety, which is it's supposed to be the same as the first take. So it's not like an alternative take. It's a replica of the first take in order to have a safety in case I mess up the processing or the camera does something. So we're very limited. And then in the edit, I will create something out of the footage we have that isn't necessarily what's in the script, because I don't shoot any coverage either. There's no wide shots. We don't sort of light a big wide shot and then push in for mid shots and medium close-ups and reverses and all that kind of stuff. I watch the film in my head as I imagine it's going to be, and then I write down all the shots that I see in my head and then put them in an order, and then we shoot them. And then when it comes to the edit, I realise that I might not have imagined all of the shots that we actually needed to make the edit work. So that's when the creativity in the edit comes in. But I love that. I love that in the edit, manipulating time, because ultimately, for me, cinema is just two things. It's capturing light and manipulating time. Capturing light, I will hand over to the man who lit the film.
That was very smooth. That's good. He segued in. Yeah. What would you like to know?
Well, maybe just tell us a little bit about your experiences of kind of working on bait and kind of your role.
As Mark said, it was the second collaboration that we've done in this way, which was, say, quite basic, sort of three-point lighting, really. Going back to the project that we did before, I remember getting a phone call from Mark saying, do you fancy coming and trying out this project? Do you know anything about lighting? It's like, well, I know a little bit, sort of, basic interview lighting. And he said, nothing. He said, that's more than I know. Come on down. Bring some lights. I'm so sorry. We're not supposed to say that out loud. So yeah, that kind of worked out all right. And so we came back for this one sort of very much the same way. Quite, say, very simple. Just using, say, a basic 3-light setup, also with some reflectors, good old sunlight, really basic stuff. I mean, it's just the simple framing, simple lighting. It kind of, by limiting your choices, you get a sort of focus from that, don't you? You don't have a myriad of solutions available to you. So you are forced to sort of pick one and go with that. So we sort of developed a routine and a way of working that became a really sort of smooth and effective workflow in a sense. So we got a lot done in the day. Weren't doing huge amounts of relighting, not so much, not too many lights physically to work with. So it became quite a smooth and simple workflow, I think.
Okay. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about the way you when you shot the film, in terms of the way you use the reels? Because I mean, I've read some interesting things about what you do with the beginning and the end of the rolls, for example.
Yeah, so the 100-foot spools, which last for about 2.5 minutes, but obviously you have a bit at the end of each roll and the start of each roll that may or may not be fogged, may or not be accidentally exposed to light when the camera's being loaded, because the camera's just loaded in a changing bag, which isn't necessarily totally light proof, and quite often we'd be doing it sort of on the beach in broad daylight, so never quite sure how much of the film has been fogged. But because we're working with such a small amount of stock, we'd never want to waste anything. So if I'd loaded the roll and we were getting ready to shoot a take, rather than just burning off the first few feet that might be fogged, I would just quickly shoot a close-up of something that was in the vicinity. Then at the end of a roll, I might have 5 foot left on a roll and I'm getting ready to do your close-up and you've got some dialogue, but it's going to be more than 5 foot, so I'm going to have to change the roll before I can do your take. Rather than wasting that 5 foot, I might get just a cutaway of your foot that might help in the edit to then make a scene work. And so it ended up, we shot 130 rolls, so we basically had 260 bits of film, which were effectively meaningless. They didn't come from the script, they weren't ever written, but they were within the scene. So I had this belief that they kind of, well, I didn't have this belief. I'm reverse engineering meaning, because I'm sat in a Q&A at the time. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just didn't want to throw away the film. But in the edit, these things kind of present themselves to you. The prime example is in the pub with all the carved wooden figureheads. That I know that pub really well, and I never pay any attention to those figureheads. We recce'd the location before we shot and looked at angles and stuff. Nobody ever mentioned these figureheads. But then there was so much dialogue in the pub that we were shooting a lot of footage, and so having the start and end of rolls, I was just spinning the camera, and I'd say to Colin, just light that figurehead there, 5 seconds of a wooden figurehead, and then didn't think anything more of it. And then when it came to editing the film, I saw all this footage, all these strips of film that had these faces on them, and I thought it'd be interesting if we start cutting them in with the real people. And then what I started to notice was that every character in the pub seemed to have a doppelganger, and some of them are really weirdly similar. And there's one actor, Jake, who plays one of the friends of Hugo, who didn't have a wooden doppelganger. But then I found out I'd somewhere filmed this little brass thing of a face that was nailed to a wall somewhere. I think it was in the pub, but it might have been in like the toilet or something. And that looked exactly like him, and suddenly he had a doppelganger as well. So then everybody had a doppelganger. And then I started cutting it in, and then in Q&As I say, they're all in there deliberately because they represent the sort of timelessness and how all the characters from history are all within the pub, and everybody's watching this humiliation of this young lad, and it's all about... But it's bollocks. It was just... They were just there.
Right.
And, if we... And this isn't a criticism of digital technology in any way. If we'd shot on a format that we could just shoot loads of stuff, we'd have probably just shot the shit out of everything in that pub. And then when it came to the edit, wouldn't have even reviewed it, because it would just been hours of kind of irrelevant stuff. But because it was a very small amount of shots, that I'd also hand processed. So I put the work into processing. And there's strips of films that are, it's there, sort of reminding me that they exist. Suddenly, they have much more significance than they should have done.
Okay. Just one, a quick show of hands. How many filmmaker students have we got in the room? Because I thought I recognised quite a few. I mean, just wondering, because obviously something that's very important to your work is the kind of handcrafted nature of it, kind of shooting it, processing it, editing it. I mean, what advice would you give to kind of any budding filmmakers if they wanted to kind of go down the route that you've gone down in terms of working with film?
Well, if you've got a passion for it, I'll just say do it. I mean, that's why I shoot film. I started out at 17 shooting rolls of Super 8 and sending the cartridges to Germany and getting them back, rolls of Kodachrome, and putting them on a projector, and they were positives. So, being able to project them and making soundtracks on cassette tape. And that's how I fell in love with film. That was what I was excited about. And then I came to Bournemouth and studied, and we carried on doing that kind of stuff. We were shooting on video and things, but very basic video that you had to be creative with, but also carried on shooting with Super 8. And I developed films in that way and was working on short films in that way. And then at some point, I sort of got, as the technological improvements increased, I kind of got caught up in that to a point where I made a film in 2010. I loved the film, but I shot it in a way that was how a lot of people were shooting low-budget digital films at the time, and I just felt, I don't like this process. And then I got ill. I told the story a lot of times, you might have heard this in the interview before, but I got ill and had to have an operation, which at the time wasn't great, but now it's just the best thing that could have happened, because I had about a month where I had to lay on the sofa and couldn't do anything. And I watched Mark Cousin's The Story of Film documentary, the 15-hour thing that he did. And I watched that a couple of times. And I just listening to him talking about film and being so enthusiastic. And I just thought, I used to feel like that about film, but I don't anymore. And so I decided I was going to retrace my steps and go back to where I fell in love with film and was really excited about it. And it was actual film. And it was the sort of alchemy of taking something and seeing an image appear on it and understanding it, because it was a material, like hard drives and digital. I don't understand where the film is. I don't get, it's probably me, but where is the film? The idea, digital technology is just I just can't follow it. So, and it's probably the control freak in me as well, that I need to be able to touch the film to understand that it exists and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, going back to shooting film 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever it was, just reignited my love of filmmaking, which means that it resulted in me developing a process like this, where I'm actually making films that are now kind of commercially viable, but in a way that I would have done as a kid, meaning that I write the script, I direct it, I shoot it, I process it, I edit it, I do the theme tune, I do, because I'm like a child. I don't want anybody. I've got, very essential collaborators who I work with, but everything I can do, I want to do, because I'm a childlike control freak, and I love it. I love every aspect of filmmaking. So I go to bed, I've developed a process where I go to bed on Sunday night excited about getting up on Monday morning. So in answer to your question, I think if anybody wants to do this, don't copy pre-existing processes, work out where your enjoyment is for it, and make films in that way. Because what this film's proved, or seems to have proved, is that nobody knows anything, because we've got a sort of a hit film, and it's a black and white 16mm hand-processed film about fishermen, post-synced, shot on a 43-year-old camera. If you pitched that and said, it's going to take nearly £500,000 at the UK box office, people would just go, you're joking. But, somebody said the other day, quoting William Goldman, this film is the proof that nobody knows anything about anything. So just do your own thing, I think, is what I would say to film students. And don't, listen to everybody, but don't, just make your own mind up.
Brilliant. Sound advice. I think that's probably a good note to open it up to any audience questions. Do we have any? Oh, a couple of hands. Brilliant. Maybe if we take one down here to start with. If you don't mind keeping your hands up in a bit, because it's quite difficult to see.
I had two questions, but hopefully they'll be quick. I wanted to ask what you used to record the audio, because it's also got like a really interesting, almost analogue feel. And I also wanted to ask, was editing a technical nightmare? Because like with the hand processing, did you have to go back and reshoot anything? Like with sync, did it take ages, basically?
So everything's post-synced in my studio. So once everything's processed and the studio's like a wet space, it then becomes a dry space where I use electrical equipment, and I build a voiceover booth in the studio, and the actors come in one by one and record the dialogue, and it's done. I record everything to. I record it digitally, but I record it through an old valve compressor to just get a nice analog quality to it, and then I do loop it through 1/4-inch tape as well, just to get a bit of warmth into it. I don't know if it makes any difference or whether I just like standing there turning actual knobs and faders and stuff rather than just tapping. It might just be sort of for the sake of it. But I prefer a valve compressor than a sort of using digital compression. And then with the editing, I mean the editing, once the negative is processed, it is then scanned, so it's a 2K scan, which then I do the edit with digital files, and then it's printed back to film at the end of the process. So we don't have much footage, so we had 4.5 hours of rushes for an 1.5 hour long film. So we finished shooting in the middle of October. I processed the film up until sort of Christmas time, and then it was scanned digitally, and then I got it back in January. So January was the first time I ever saw any moving footage. So January was the first time I knew whether we had footage that worked. I'd looked at individual frames from the negative on the light box to check the grain and stuff, but I didn't know whether we had any movement problems or transport problems with the camera or anything like that until the January. But it was 4.5 hours footage. So when the digital footage turned up, I put it on the projector at home, watched it all through in the morning, had dinner, and then watched it all through in the afternoon, all of the rushes. So I watched all of the rushes twice in one day, and so by the end of that day, I had a edit in my head. I sort of knew how it was going to work. And then the edit probably took about 3 days to do the first assembly. And then from then, it's gradually just tweaking it as voices were added and as soundtrack was added and as the score was added. And we were done by July, I think. It was the end of the second week of the Tour de France. I remember that. Because I was watching the Tour de France on my iPad at the back of the dubbing theatre whilst I was supposed to be listening to the film. People kept saying, "What do you think of that?" And I'd go, "Oh, what? Brilliant." Yeah. So yeah, it's middle of July. So it wasn't a long process at all.
Thank you.
Both of you kind of already talked about limitations on set, be that in the format or kind of the equipment you have or the takes you do, birthing something kind of brilliant or something that you like in film. I was just wondering more of your thoughts on restrictive filmmaking, creating something you wouldn't have thought or something new.
Do I need to repeat the question now?
Sorry. Just so we can hear.
Okay, so just to summarise, the question was the way the limitations create something new within the form. Is that right? Okay. I think the limitations are everything really, and the more limitations, the better. Because I think really the complete freedom is really a bad thing in terms of filmmaking. So I think if everything's possible, then for me nothing ever happens. Because just as you're about to sort of do something, you think, well, I could do it that way, or I could do it this way. But I mean, with us, going back to what Colin was talking about equipment, on set we had a camera, one lens, and then I had a light meter that was around my neck, and I had pockets full of rolls of film. And then Mikey, who was the camera assistant, had the tripod. So we'd come down from our digs in the morning to the unit base to have breakfast, and the whole camera kit was on the table with the breakfast. There was nothing, it was all so simple. And then likewise, Colin had 3 lights and a reflector. And that was it. So, and like Colin said, if it doesn't work, you have to find a way that it does work, rather than, we're trying to do something really ambitious. Let's just chuck loads of equipment at it. You go, well, we can't remove those people over there that are on holiday, and we don't want them in the shot, but we can't move them, or there's bits in the film which were going to be done in much wider shots, but are in close-ups because there was a huge tall ship being moved to the harbour in the background, and so we end up doing stuff in a close-up montage because we can't have a wide shot, and then you read a review saying, the amazing close-up montage of blah blah blah. You go, yeah, well, we were forced into that, and I think we should take credit for that, because it is that setting up a situation and a working practice that has got those limitations, that that on the day you're going to have to put your heads together and work out a way of doing something creatively rather than chuck in resources at it. And that's when you end up doing something new, I think.
Should we go to the one straight behind?
What was the process of composing the score for the film and trying to find something that would suit the style and tone?
Okay, so just to repeat the question, what was the process of composing the score and finding something to suit the style and tone? I bought myself a little analog synthesizer, and it was mostly, I can't play music, but I'd like to look at this little analog synthesizer, and a friend of mine, Gweno, who's actually on the soundtrack of the film, she used one of these on her last album, and I thought, I quite like the idea of playing around with one of those, sort of as a break from working on the film, because I'd spent months hand processing the film and I was editing, and I thought I need something to do in the studio that isn't linked to the film, that I can just have a bit of time away from, and I bought this little synthesizer and started making drones and working with an effects pedal and a delay pedal and the valve compressor and all these kind of things, and just started making these drone sounds for myself. But because they were sort of playing in the studio whilst I was working on the film, I started thinking, actually, they work quite well in the film. But I felt very self-conscious that, having taken on all these roles, I was now proposing that I scored the film as well, like I was some kind of musician. But that didn't stop me from laying the tracks into the film just to see how they would work. And I really liked the way that to me it sounded a bit like a sort of out of tune accordion or something. Obviously, it's got an association with the sea, and they tended to mix quite well with the sound of the sea. And that after a while, I did say to Kate and Lynn, the producers, I said, those drones that are in the rough cut, I quite like them. I'd quite like to keep them. And they said that they agreed. So. That was it. They stayed in, but it was the bit that I was very self-conscious about, and that's why it's uncredited, because I felt a bit of a fraud. But now, I've signed a record deal, and it's been released. It's actually out digitally now and released on vinyl and cassette on the 17th of January.
Brilliant. Any other questions? Maybe come over. We should just go back here, and then if we come down, that's all right.
Yeah, hi. Two things really. First of all, the statement. Thank you very much for getting the syntax of the Cornish dialect pretty much spot on there. Second point, how on earth did you manage to find different angles of Charlestown that hadn't already been exploited by Paul Dark?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat that for the recording. Was it well done for getting the Cornish syntax correct? Yeah. And how did you find different angles of Charlestown Harbour? Well, the outside of Charlestown Harbour is a pretty big harbour, so we had to shoot it one direction to make it look like it was much smaller than it was anyway. So, and I think that's the other thing, because we're working so quick, we just sort of worked out the angles we could shoot, and then we go, right, now we've got to tell this story either looking that way, or looking that way, and then it became simple. It's a sort of like ruling things out more than sort of exploring the possibilities, I think. But it is interesting how many people, and how many Cornish people as well, who know Cornwall well, get the harbour wrong and don't recognise it as Charlestown. But I think, because of what they do in the inner harbour with all the film stuff, the outer harbour is so underused now that I think people forget about Charlestown Harbour and forget about what an amazing place it is. with the beaches either side and all that kind of stuff. Because the other thing, because we paid to be there, so we had the run of the outer harbour and both of the beaches. The temptation was that we could have used the beaches both sides, and so again we just had to go, right, we're going to make a decision that we're just going to use the beach on the left-hand side, and we're going to forget that the other beach exists, so we're not tempted to use it. So I think that was, just those limitations and knowing what we couldn't show.
Hi, fantastic film, by the way. I was just wondering, what was your inspiration for the montage where there's the three scenes being cross-cut with each other? So Martin and Hugo in the pub, the couple cooking their dinner, and Tim and Sandra eating the lobster.
So what was the inspiration between the cross-cutting the three dinner scenes? Montage. Yeah. I don't know if there was an influence really, other than trying to build tension out of things that were effectively quite domestic. Obviously, the moment in the pub is quite threatening and at times quite comical, but the other two meals are supposed to be sort of domestic and quite mundane, and how tension could be built within that. Originally, it had a drone sound on it that went over the top of all three cross-cutting scenes, which built the tension. But actually, I think there was I watched the edit back at one point and had the drone track muted, and suddenly it was loads more powerful. And again, it's one of those things where I can claim that, there was some amazing insight into realizing that silence was much more powerful than the drone, but it was probably a technical mistake that made me see it without the drone, and suddenly the silence was the terrifying, or not the terrifying, but a sort of unnerving element within it. But I think that's the other thing of not recording any sound. If you don't record sound, you don't have any sound until you add sound on, and adding sound on takes a lot of time. So I do watch the film with no sound on quite a lot, and it's the first thing that I look at. Maybe not on that scene because I did put the drone over it, but the idea that would this work with no sound at all is a question that I'm asking all the time, because for me the glory days of cinema was where there was less diegetic sound within films.
Brilliant. I'm afraid we've only got time for one more question, so there was a gentleman down here.
So two simple questions. What was your budget? And what was your shooting schedule? How long did it take you? Okay,
so the question was, what's the budget and what's the shooting schedule? So the budget was about 150,000, and that combines, the actual money we had was significantly less than that, but we had a huge amount of in-kind support, and it was 21 days, wasn't it?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's even more amazing.
Is Ballyhack County Cork?
No, it's Waterford.
Oh, right. Oh, where the ferry is?
Yeah, my cousins all work on the ferry.
Oh, I made a road movie on Super 8 a few years ago. I went from... I went across on the ferry. I shot it in 2004, but then I made the film as a sort of... as a diary film with a made-up narrative, so it's difficult to remember what I actually did and what I wrote I did in the film. But I went from Rosslare down to sort of Ballydonegan, the Beara Peninsula, and well, it's very much like Cornwall, which is what my films. That film that I made is called Dear Marianne. It's about that. Actually, I needed to get away from Cornwall a bit and ended up going to somewhere that was more Cornish than Cornwall was.
So the other thing I was wanting to ask you is, I really like Martin as a character, and I'm sure everyone felt that kind of connection with Martin. How did you think? You talked about your process before, that you thought about everything visually before you actually got into the making of the film. My question is empathy. I was trying to figure out, because Martin's a prickly character, but I liked him a lot, and I was trying to figure out, where did you make me care for him? And I wondered whether it was just him putting the fish on the doors, which is a great touch, and it's really subtly done, and he does it twice, I think, in the film, but it's very effective, because it is how working class communities look after each other, and especially in these dark times that we're in. And I wondered whether that was a conscious thing that came out in your visualisation, or whether the actors participated in some way and contributed.
Well, Ed, who plays Martin, who's a St Austell boy, Oh, did you? Right. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about that character. He, by his own admission, he's from the clay country in the St Austell area, so he's more of a sort of mining community than a fishing community. So the specifics of it are very different. And he said he didn't, he would have to do a lot of research about the fishing community. But effectively, like you say, working class communities, they're all the same, which is a really important thing to remember at a time when we're being told that we're all different and you're different and I'm different, and that actually we're all exactly the same and we've all got the same hopes and fears and desires and everything. So, but also with him, as a character, he's a bit of a dick as well, which makes him human. Because I'm not going to say everybody, but I'll own this comment. I'm a bit of a dick as well. We've all. Now I am projecting, but I think that, the imperfection of the human character is where the empathy comes from. It can only be you and audience members who decide whether that works or not. But certainly you cannot have a sort of whiter than white hero. But his heart's in the right place, and there's a lot of performance within the character as well as Ed performing a character. The character he's performing is performing as well. So in public, he's very antagonistic towards his brother, but when he then goes round to his brother's house the next morning, and leaves fish for him, and then goes in and he chats to him because he's his brother. So it's all these sort of contradictions and imperfections and performance that goes on in life that actually, he's just somebody who's trying to do what he thinks is the best. And for me, I think that all the characters, none of the characters are evil. They've all, even the guy who comes out in his pants and starts quoting mythical laws about what noise you can make in the morning, he's still, it's his holiday, and he might have a really difficult life, and he might have a really stressful existence somewhere, and he's been sold a lie. He's been sold a website image of this place he's going to stay in that doesn't communicate how bad it smells and how loud it sounds in the morning and things like that. So actually they're all just humans and rubbing along, and this is just an example of where you've got a lot of people who feel disenfranchised, and how if you're disenfranchised and you feel forgotten and you feel alienated, sometimes that can manifest itself in destructive ways, which I think might be why people have commented that it's in some way a Brexit film. Not my intention, but
brilliant. I really hate to shut this down because it's a really, really interesting discussion. But it'd be great if we could show our appreciation to Colin and Mark for coming in.
And can I just say, at the beginning, I didn't mean to say anything bad about Boscombe. I specifically meant like the high street, because we walked up there and I just said to Colin, God, this is just, there was a queue of inappropriately dressed people queuing to go into the academy, and there was like a little bit of a fight breaking out outside McDonald's, and I was like, God, this takes me back. So yeah, no comment on Boscombe, just... I'll keep digging.
Cheers. Thank you, and thanks to the audience as well for some wonderful questions. Thank you.
Wow. How amazing was that? Thank you so much, Shaun Kimber, and everyone at Dirt in the Gate, Dan Palmer especially. Thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate you setting this up for us. God, did we learn a lot there from Mark. I know it's Q&A, so it's always a little difficult to fully express and get into so much detail, but some of those questions from the audience were amazing, so thank you as well, those people who asked those questions. Really, really appreciate that. It's just really interesting, isn't it, how someone can just go out there and make the film with their friends, and it can do so well. And it is achievable, and I want you to know that. And if you're struggling sometimes, which you all do, then take heed from this. Take heed from Mark's lesson, which is, do you know what, I want to go and do this on my own, and I'm going to do it my way. And you might not like this, but I do. And I appreciate what I'm trying to do here, and go out and make your film. And that's what's so important. So thank you so much for the honesty, and thank you so much for listening. Appreciate your time. Speaking of making your film, the Make Your Film event is, a quick reminder, next Tuesday, January the 28th. So get your tickets, come on down, come and join us. I can't wait to see you there. So until next Tuesday, which is with Shola Amo, the brilliant director of The Last Tree, go out there, keep making your film. Remember, if you're lucky enough to rise up and do well, it's your duty to send that elevator back down. See you next Tuesday. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.